The story begins with a beautiful woman named Megan, who is having a call with her sister Blair. Blair is about to marry her fiancé in 2 days' time. So Megan, who lives in Denver, has to go back to her parents' house in Wichita. After ending the call, Megan walks into the office of a grocery store to give her pitch regarding her business, which entails the sales of old-fashioned toys for children. By chance, Lynn, who owned the supermarket, had an appointment with Megan that day. But Lynn was attending to another client in her office, and this annoyed Megan since she wanted to go home as early as possible. Megan waited for a bit before she saw Lynn and another man, Alden, walking out of the office. So turned out that Megan and Alden were schoolmates while in high school, and now they both own toy firms and were trying to get their products distributed in the supermarket. When Megan talked to Lynn, she introduced some examples of the classic toys she believed would be perfect for getting children away from phones and tablets. Megan was certain that the toys would sell well in the market. Lynn was not yet convinced and was always very cautious when choosing products for her shop. After leaving the office, Megan called Blair to let her know she'd run into Alden again, the same competitor from their high school days. She informed him that Alden also had a toy company and now they were again competing to acquire customers just like during their school days. When Megan was all set to leave for the airport, she suddenly realized that Denver's airport had been shut and she wouldn't be able to fly to Wichita. So she decided to drive to an airport in another city and rent a vehicle from the other city. But on her arrival at the rental office, she discovered that all the cars were fully booked since she was under pressure to get back. She tried to convince the rental officer, who was named Stella. Megan almost pleaded with Stella to rent her a car and explained she had to get to her sister's bachelorette party before the wedding. It took a lot of doing, but Megan ended up with a car after all. And then, out of the blue, she ran into Alden, who was also heading to the other airport. It so happened that Alden also had to go back home to Wichita with his parents. He tried to persuade Megan by promising to buy her a free airplane ticket. On the way, Megan and Alden were regaling each other with stories about the past. Megan was still resentful and brought up their past school rivalry, even asking for the trophy of the debate competition Alden had won. When Alden checked the flight timetable, he saw that all the airplane tickets were reserved and that the next flight to Wichita would leave the following morning. First, they considered taking an inner-city bus. However, they ultimately decided to drive back by themselves, a trip that would last some 7 or 8 hours. The trip continued. Shortly after, Megan eventually told Blair that she wouldn't be able to go to the bachelorette party before the wedding and that she would send a speech in place of her on the road. Alden was fed up with the silence in the car, but Megan still wouldn't let him play the radio because she was upset with him and had an old issue. Megan, irritated, brought up the high school debate competition again and accused Alden of cheating back then. Unfortunately, she couldn't actually prove it, so she switched the argument to the business competition they were presently engaged in. After having driven a long distance, Alden and Megan pulled over at a store to purchase some snacks. But upon going outdoors, they found that their rented vehicle had been stolen. They were forced to call the police to report that the vehicle and all their belongings had been stolen. At least, Alden was grateful that he was carrying his wallet and phone. Luckily, they found a used car for sale nearby at a cheap rate. Megan explained everything to Blair and asked her to call Alden's phone if she needed anything. She told her that she'd find a way to reach home before the wedding ceremony. When they started traveling again, Megan was devastated about her lost luggage, the one with the antique shawl she had planned to give Blair as a gift. Alden remembered that Megan had worn the same shawl to their high school farewell party, and Megan was surprised he would even remember a thing like that. When Megan checked the traffic online, she realized there was construction ahead on the highway. She thus directed Alden to take an alternative route. The detour led them to a small town called McKenzie, and they got into an argument about the direction they needed to go. Alden nearly collided with a tree stump during the argument. Because of that, Alden had to call roadside assistance to have the broken-down car towed from the roadside. Meanwhile, Megan explained everything to her sister and forwarded the speech for the bachelorette party. The speech was read later by Blair's friend, Della. There was some waiting before a mechanic, Charlie, came to inspect the car. He told them that he would have to drive it back to his garage as it was already late. Alden and Megan were then invited by Charlie to spend the night at his home, for all the small hotels in town were filled with visitors who had come for a festival that was the next day. When they reached Charlie's house, he introduced them to his wife, Sadie. Charlie and Sadie were a lovely couple. At once, Sadie suggested that they borrow some sleeping clothes since the house contained a single guest room. Charlie also suggested that instead of trying to sleep on the couch, they could pitch a tent outdoors, which he thought would be more comfortable. The next morning, Blair told their mom that Alden's car was still stuck in that little town. This made their mom worry and hope that Megan would come home before the wedding. The scene then shifted to Alden and Megan, who were surprised to see Charlie show up. After that, Charlie invited them for breakfast, and Megan observed that they were going to wear traditional Scottish-style clothes to respect their outdated way of living. Nobody in this town utilized electricity or electronic devices. For this reason, Alden was also unable to charge his phone. To top it all off, Charlie refused to fix Alden's car that day since it was a national holiday and the entire town was participating in the festivity. After breakfast, Alden made up his mind that he would proceed to the town adjoining theirs, which was 20 miles away. However, Megan didn't know whether she could walk that distance. Because of that, she wanted to attempt to get Alden to just accept things and come along with the people to the townspeople's celebration of the festival. If they tried to drive to the next town, there was a good bet they'd run into more trouble again, and it seemed wiser to wait until Charlie could fix Alden's car. Alden finally conformed to Megan's strategy because he had a couple of days still before he was to be home for his father's retirement party. After obtaining some garments on loan, Alden and Megan walked to the venue where the residents had gathered to enjoy themselves at the festival. There, Charlie and Sadie led them to meet a man named Frank, who wished to dance with Megan and also invited them to join in the games of the festival. As they walked out, Megan asked about Alden's father, who had recently retired as an artist. As a way of reciprocating, Megan shared with them about her own father, who was deceased. That had pained her and Blair since their dad would not be present to witness them getting married. Later, Alden and Megan participated in some of the festival games. Once the games were finished, Alden talked to Charlie and Sadie for a while. Then, when he noticed Megan walking towards Frank, he became slightly jealous. Before the festival ended, everyone went back into the hall to listen to a short tale Charlie had about the town's history. Charlie finally got them all dancing a waltz as a finale. That brought back memories of their high school prom nights, and Alden invited Megan to dance with him. When the festival finally ended, Alden and Megan, both in great moods, headed back home to Charlie's. But then Megan realized that Alden had actually not been having much fun playing the games, at least not until he had asked her to dance. Because it was extremely dark, Alden and Megan lost their way while returning to Charlie's house. But they kept walking until they reached a pile of hay. Meanwhile, Wendy went to Blair, as she knew her daughter would be a bit nervous a day before the wedding. The film shifted back to McKenzie town, where Alden and Megan were also searching for Charlie's house. They camped out there overnight and talked over everything that had taken place at the festival. Alden admitted to feeling jealous when he saw Megan growing close to Frank. Even though they had always been rivals in school, Alden finally admitted that he had feelings for Megan. That made Megan think that maybe Alden should have just asked her out. The truth was, Megan had also liked Alden all along, even though they had been competitors. The next morning, when waking up, Alden told Megan that where they had been overnight was very close to Charlie's house. He went on to say that the whole time during the festival, he had bought a piece of fabric so that Megan could use it to offer Blair in return for the shawl she had lost. When Alden and Megan were getting ready to have breakfast, Charlie informed them that he would need a replacement part to fix Alden's car so it could withstand the long drive again. To their ill fortune, Megan did not have a great deal of time to waste, so she agreed to use Charlie's car so that the two of them could go straight to Wichita while Alden and Megan were driving. They were unexpectedly stopped by a sheriff, who happened to be Frank. Initially, Frank suspected that they had stolen Charlie's vehicle, but in reality, he simply wanted to present them with a bottle of fruit liquor as a memento. Meanwhile, Megan's mother, Wendy, was waiting eagerly for Megan to arrive. For this reason, Blair asked Della to be her maid of honor. Initially, Della was hesitant, but when Blair and her mother departed to the wedding, she eventually used the special dress that had belonged to Megan. When they arrived at their destination, Megan told Alden that she would love to have a date with him on returning to Seattle. They went to Della's house, and since Megan had forgotten about the location of Blair's wedding, Della gave her the name of a church. When Megan went to that church, she felt confused at once because it was completely quiet, and no one was around inside. At the same time, Della also came to look for Megan and offered her apologies for lying, because, Actually, she had only wanted to be the one standing on Blair's side as her maid of honor at Con. Meanwhile, Wendy and Blair, who were worried, were finally reassured upon noticing that Megan and Della had arrived. Megan then asked Della to be the maid of honor in her stead, since she wasn't there at the rehearsal and didn't think that Della was a better fit to be standing next to Blair. Finally, after the wedding ceremony was over, Megan congratulated Blair and her new husband on starting their new life together. Then Megan told them all about what she'd experienced on the way back, including how their rental car had been stolen and how she'd wasted an entire day stranded in a town without power. As Megan finished her speech, she and Blair noticed that Alden had also been at the party. Alden had figured out where the ceremony was being held, thanks to social media, and had come to give Megan the debate trophy, since he knew how much she had wanted it. With that present, Alden and Megan talked business and decided that if they merged their toy businesses, they could sell their products in large stores. At the end, Alden confessed that during this whole trip, he had fallen in love with Megan. And Megan confessed to have fallen in love with Alden too.